We're here live with Michael Coxon of RSHYR. Coco, that was an interesting race.
Yeah, it was a challenging race in many ways. It's like a piece of shock cord where you'd go out, you'd come in, go out, just a matter of timing really, where you got to the parking lots.
And you got a couple of those, did you?
Yeah, we got a couple of pretty good ones where we had 000 for quite a period of time for both. Just the luck of the draw, and you watch your boat come up behind you, and maybe drop to 5 knots. But keep on going. But that's life. That's.
And you got through the first night pretty cleanly.
Yeah, we very cleanly. Worst we broke a clip on the jib halyard, and so that meant we're in about 25 knots sailing backwards down through the fleet in irons, but we sorted that out pretty quickly, and the boat was very well prepared.
So there were quite a lot of retirements, and the wind wasn't that high. Did they have short backs on the seas and things? What would have caused that, do you think?
Yes, look, the seas were pretty gnarly. Depending where you went, if you pushed out into the current further, they were pretty gnarly, and I think that they were high level. I'm not sure what all the reasons were. So if the reasons were for breakages, failures, I don't know. You just got to have your boat well and your people well prepared.
Yeah, and I suppose there's an element of the COVID and all that stuff where boats probably weren't as prepared as they might be anyway.
100% right. None of us have done anything like the sailing we would normally do. It was more like a Southport race at the beginning of the season than the Hobart in the middle of the season. I always say that the Southport is the beginning of the Hobart race.
Yeah. Fair enough. And what was the sort of best bit of sailing for your purposes?
I think the companionship and crew work. I mean, every man on board just kept going the whole way and very positive, and we were always in the front money in our division, and overall we'd go up and down. I think at one stage we were about 17th, another time we were leading overall, and you just keep pushing hard and it's just fun sailing. I think the challenge of dealing with two highs were interesting, like sailing through two lines like that, because it's not something we do very often in the southern hemisphere.
And they were also quite wide, weren't they? I mean, finding a short spot through them would have been hard.
Yeah, and then they would evaporate. Like, as I say, that you could have a boat an hour or so behind you, and they'd start to just lift and go. So.
And what do you think this means for the rest of the fleet now? Because it's not looking that good back up the track either.
Michael, our navigator, mentioned that, but I haven't had a look at it closely. He seemed to think that our race from this morning was against the two TPs who made it through. I think, based on what Michael told me, we had some internet problems, so we didn't have great communications on the fleet. But what he said, that I think Celestial and Ichiban made it through, and I think the Smuggler and who was the other one, Quest, I think might have got dropped off, which is a shame because Quest was sailing so well for so long. But it can just happen, just a matter of when you arrive at a certain spot. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much indeed, Coco. Enjoy the celebrations anyway.
No problem. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, so here's the navigator himself. Are we going to get a chance to have a chat with Michael, or is he still busy doing COVID stuff? So this is the perhaps less attractive side of this particular race, is that none of the crew, when they get ashore, can get ashore. In fact, the first thing they have to do is go through their rapid antigen tests and ensure that they're all 100% safe, and then they're released onto the shore. So not even much transfer of beers, I think, to that degree. So it's pretty hard yards for these guys. It's a bit of a downer too when you arrive, family and friends wanting to say hello and hug and shake hands and so forth, and then you've got to go through all this paperwork. And we've got here Michael Bellum, the navigator on board, who's sometimes known as Mr. Spreadsheet, but his job is to ensure that all of the tests are all coming out okay. So he's sitting down here with David Griffith, the owner, going through everything and just checking everything's all good. Quite clearly don't want to have a problem with that. And in the meantime, in the background, Stefan Racing is coming back to the pod they had originally designed for her, found her fenders, and all good to go. We had a chat with those guys earlier. They've obviously had a good race and a lot of fun. Great boat too. So up the river, while all of this is going on, is if you turn around now, you can there's no activity visible seen, but the two boats that are really having a ding-dong battle just a little bit down the river there are Celestial and Ichiban, both of them vying for division win. Great to see a really close battle going there. I think, as Coco alluded to a moment ago, I fear that what's happened is that high has separated a number of the TP52. So it's possible that Quest and Smuggler may have got caught behind a high there and just not made it through, which is pretty tough. What that actually means for the rest of the race, I think, really remains to be seen. It's quite possible that this may end up being a bigger boat race than was originally envisaged. You still go down through the IRC standings, and there's just such a mix of all sizes and ages of boats in that, as to who's up there or not. But I would think that probably by the end of today we'll have a pretty good idea about whether or not really anybody else is going to get through to this and take out IRC. So it could well be that that's landing potentially with the boats that are now in the river. And that's often the way. It's a bit of a mix, but as Coco said, one of the unusual features of this race has been the huge high that sort of parked through Bass Strait. Very low winds, big holes, and incredibly local as well. So that's another feature you often find is people say they go into holes, and what that means is they are literally the triple zeros. I think somebody called them the 3 lemons on a slot machine, which means you've got absolutely no wind at all. There is nothing you can do there except be patient, watch the weather around you and just work out what the next transition is. And some of those can be really wide, and of course when you're coming down through Bass Strait and you get any of those or any of the coast, you're looking for the shortest gap. What's the shortest section you've got to go through that will get you out the other side? And in this one there were some pretty big holes, so actually even just choosing that was pretty hard. There weren't too many other options really. Even just going in towards land wasn't much better than staying offshore. And ultimately, when they're that big, you can't chase around the outside. It just takes too much to try and get back to land again. You just lose too much along the way. You're better off risking it sitting there and just sort of watching the weather, and which will change literally hourly, and then you hopefully get a bit of a sneak through. Very frustrating for these guys, especially exhausting for the navigators. You look at these guys and they look a bit starry-eyed at the end of the race when they've had a really big heavy race, but actually the navigators just look probably more drawn and exhausted in any of the races where actually they've just been trying to deal with endless sort of holes and low highs and so forth along the way down. This boat we're looking at here, Whisper, was formerly Jethu. She was raced in Europe and then acquired by David Griffith, originally with Rupert Henry. In fact, Rupert Henry then has gone off into two-handing. David Griffith's down here on the floor doing the last bits of the exercise here. It's taken the boat on. This boat, in fact, was sailed by Rupert Henry on the Melbourne-Osaka race, two-handed. Can you imagine that? Look at the size of this thing. That would have been a lot of work. But again, it just goes to show the seamanship of some of these two-handers. And I think one of the things we're going to really enjoy... Oh, here we go. Here's Ichiban. If you wanted to turn around, and I'll follow you around with the camera. There's Ichiban out in the river, just put her sails down. So she's obviously... got ahead of, or stayed ahead of Celestial. She was ahead of Celestial in the river for a while there. So she's managed to hold on to that, and then we'll have a look shortly and see where that leaves her with the ratings in IRC in particular, bearing in mind that she's won it twice now in the recent history and the last few years, and obviously trying to go for the three-peat, I guess. So I think at this point we might leave live. The guys here on Whisper are looking pretty busy still, and we might see if we can come back later and have a bit more of a chat with David Griffith and Michael Bellingham later on. That's it from Dockside for the moment.